Hi, my name is Jos Gerardin. I'm one of the founders of Yields.io, and today I would like to talk about the second line of defense. As we have explained in a previous discussion, model risk management is organized according to the 3 lines of defense principle. Here, the first line is model development, second line is independent model validation, and third line, the audit team, is responsible for verifying that processes between first and second line work as expected. Today, we focus on the model validation team, the second line of defense. One of the key regulatory frameworks is our 11.7, and most of the definitions in this slide are actually taken from that regulation. So what are the tasks of model validation? Well, first of all, they have to verify that models are performing as expected and that there are sufficient processes and activities in place to guarantee this. When performing model validation, you need to focus on all the key elements, which means the input, the data quality, for instance, or the data that flows into the model, the processing, the actual model action, and the reporting how the outputs of the model are being used. This holds for both in-house developed models as well as models that have been purchased by third-party vendors. And a key element of model validation is critical review. It's the purpose to have an interactive discussion between first and second line, where second line is critically assessing all the choices that first line has been doing. So a typical model validation team needs to be, first of all, independent. They have to have separate reporting lines as compared to the first line, the business. They need to have sufficient knowledge, skills, and expertise in building and validating models. And because of the way in which the organization is organized, they should have explicit authority to challenge first line model development and even to stop models going into production. When does model validation have to take place? Well, first of all, when a new model is put into production, it first has to pass initial review. Once models are running in production, periodic review takes place, which is governed by having some kind of a minimal frequency. At least once every year, the model has to be reviewed. And secondly, model review needs to take place whenever there are material changes to the model. This means that the implementation can change, but also, for instance, the use case can change, and this should trigger a periodic review. Model validation is typically organized through a model validation framework. And again, in SR 11.7, there are listed 3 main elements of such a framework. First of all, the model needs to be assessed for conceptual soundness, which means that a model validation team should verify that there is sufficient developmental evidence showing that the first line during model development has verified that the model is sound. Secondly, as part of this first step, the validation team has to compare this approach with alternative theories, alternative approaches. And finally, sensitivity analysis has to be performed, meaning that we look for unstable behavior of the actual model. The second element is ongoing monitoring. This means that during the life of the model, periodically we have to assess if any of the known model limitations are being violated. To understand what are the known model limitations, we have to check the results of a previous validation, but we should also verify the different types of tests that have been performed during model development. As part of ongoing monitoring, there is also some more technological components, such as verifying that the processes are still in place. Benchmarking, so comparing in real time with alternative models is important. And for instance, checking that the code hasn't changed, that system integration is still working as expected is also very important. And finally, as part of ongoing monitoring, we have to check for overrides. Manual overrides typically indicate some issue because the model seems not to behave as the business would expect. And as a last element of a model validation framework, we have outcome analysis. This basically means that we perform backtesting. We check how the model behaved historically. And as part of that backtesting, of course, some of the key challenges are that some models have very long prediction horizons. This would mean that in that case, in order to verify the accuracy and the performance of the model, we have to wait for a fairly long amount of time. This is why the regulator also advises to modify the model to also assess model performance over shorter horizons, so we can more quickly identify any potential issue. This concludes my quick review of the second line roles and responsibilities. Thank you.